All right, so let's talk about route parameters, right? So we've looked at how routing works, right? We see that we can click on various links, and those links are being mapped to some routes, yes? And those routes compare the current URL, compare it against the paths that have been configured, yes? And if they match, then they show this component or some other component, the component that is associated to any particular path, based on the key of the current URL. So one thing that we'd like to be able to do is be able to parameterize or customize that URL. That URL up to this point has been hard coded. It's the same URL always, right? But the URL sometimes is not the same, right? It changes over time, or it changes over, especially if you're iterating over a collection, right? We would like to all those grids, right? All those elements in one of those cards to be able to have their own ID, right? So I can navigate to a particular course, a particular user, a particular student, a particular section, and whatnot. So let's take a look at how we could do that. Here we have a router, and it contains two links that are actually mapping to the same route. See that? Up to this point, we've only seen individual links mapping to their individual routes. Yes? Course editor maps to course editor. Course list maps to course list. And course grid maps to course grid. Yes? Right? But instead, we want course editor not always to map to the same course editor. We want the course editor to be dynamic. We want to say, well, if it's this course that I'm editing, I want you to edit this particular course or that other particular course, depending on the ID. Make sense? Right? All right. So what we can do here is the example that we have here is two links that have most of the link. The two is mostly the same. It says page param, but the last portion changes. 1, 2, 3, or 2, 3, 4. Right? So I would like to map them to the same route, and then that route behave differently depending on the ID that I pass along. Right? So here, what we can do is configure the route so that the path, right, is not a literal string. Instead, it has one portion is static, right? It's literal, and then part of it is a placeholder. Right? See this placeholder over here? This ID with a colon in front of it means that this is not literally the string colon I and D. Right? It's not literally those characters. It means that whatever follows page param, like 1, 2, 3, and 2, 3, 4, right, will be available to you in a variable called ID. Right? I will navigate to the component, but once you're in that component, right, you will be able to query a map and ask it, what is the value ID? What was it? Was it 1, 2, 3? Was it 2, 3, 4? What was it? Okay, right? So so let's do. What can we do with that? So once we navigate into that component, in this particular case, page param in this case, right? Here's a page param component. We can look at the parameter that came as part of the path. We can look at it through a map that is given to us that has this specific name, match.params. Match.params will have that ID. See this ID? That ID is this ID here. See that? It's available through us to this match.params. Who put it there? Well, the folks that implemented the router, right? The folks that implemented the link, the folks that they chose those names, right? To call it match, to call it params, it will pass in that data over here. Make sense? Right? So here's so let's play around with that. Let's play around with that notion. Right? So what we'd like to be able to do here is that in the grid, where's that grid? Course grid. Right? So our grid is rendering in the course card. It's passing the title. It's passing only the title, but it also needs the ID. Right? It also needs the ID. Right? So instead of just passing the title, right? We could just pass the entire object, right? That'd be easy, right? That allows me to pass a title, pass the ID, pass everything down to this course card. So let's pass the entire course object, right? There we go. So if we go into the course card, not only am I passing the title, I'm also passing the entire course, which is fine, right? We can here instead of using this.props.title, perhaps I could say this.props.course.title, right? And that should still render the same way as we had earlier, course grid. We still have the same thing, right? But instead of just passing the title, I'm passing the entire course over, right? Which not only do I have the title, I also have the ID. Also, another thing to point out, notice if I hover over this form, this more link here, notice down below, it says course dash grid hash. See that? That's because when we look at the hyperlink, this is the hyperlink. It's this one right here. Right? It's not pointing to anything. It says it's just hash. It's not pointing to anything. See that? Right? What we could do, right? What we could do here is point to what? Maybe we could point to the course editor and navigate to the course editor. How's that? Let's do that. Right? That's the whole point. I want to edit this course. If I click on the edit, it navigates to the editor. Let's do that. Right? So let's replace this hash and say course/editor. Right? So if we refresh the grid and we hover over it, notice that now it says course editor. See that? Right? It's not. Presumably I'm not going to stay here. If I click on it, notice that indeed navigates to the course editor. See that? Right? If I go back, oops, I can still navigate to any course editor, and then I can navigate back to the grid. So course editor and navigate back to the grid. Everybody okay? Right? But notice that it's always rendering the same identical content. See that? What I like to be able to do here is be able to say, well, no, I don't want to show the same course editor every single time. Instead, I like to be able to render a particular course. Yes? So to do that, we need to somehow parameterize this and say, oh, I'm going to pass you some ID here, right, which will give you a clue of which course do I want to edit. Right? Is it course 1, 2, 3 that I want to edit? 2, 3, 4? Which one do I want to edit? Yes? Right? Notice that if I do the 1, 2, 3, it's just loading the same one over and over. Everybody okay? All right, excellent. Let's go back to our course grid. So in our course card, instead of just saying /course/editor, what I like to be able to do is pass in a parameter. Right? Maybe perhaps the ID of the course that I want to edit. Right? So what my intention would be to append somehow. I would like to append this right here somehow, course and then the ID, but that doesn't work, right? Notice that if I go back to the course grid and I hover over it, notice that it's literally copying this.props.course.id. That's not what I want. I want that prop to be evaluated into whatever the ID is. 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, whatever the ID is. So to do that, we're going to use a different syntax to work with this. Right? We're going to use this syntax, which was introduced in ES6 instead of well, first of all, this is going to be an expression. First of all, right? This is going to be an expression, meaning I'm going to calculate this value. I'm going to do some string concatenation, right? One thing that I could do is do the following, right? Use the old way, which is convert this into a literal string, right? And then do a concatenation. That's the old way of doing this, right? And this is perfectly fine, right? If we hover, notice that it works. Notice that it's 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 4, 5. See that? So that's working. Yes. No, it's not gonna. It's all these are going to be intercepted by the route. Yeah, if you literally click here and do a return, it will reload the page. Yes, the default behavior will reload, but we're gonna turn that off. We don't want to do that. Yep. Right. So notice that we have the 1, 2, 3, right? And it passes the 1, 2, 3. There it is. If I go back, if I click here, notice that indeed it's 2, 3, 4. And when I click here, notice that it's 3, 4, 5, right? So it's passing that parameter, but we're not doing anything with it, right? What we like to be able to do is use that 3, 4, 5 to indeed just render that one specific course, right? So let's go back. Well, first of all, we're going to abandon this syntax. This is the old syntax of concatenating and working with strings, right? Instead, we're going to use the new and improved feature in ES6. So instead of working with concatenating strings sometimes is very error prone, especially because when you're concatenating, integers and strings and whatnot are automatically casted to the wrong thing, and so to avoid any of that, we're going to use this following syntax. We're not going to use the single quote. Instead, we're going to use the backtick, right? The backtick, okay? And so we're going to remove this right here. And we know that this is an expression, right? So we're going to put a backtick all around this. Yes? This says that this is again just a plain string. Right? This is again a plain old string, but I want to escape this not as a literal string. I want to escape it as an expression. Yes? Right? So to do this, we're going to convert it into an expression, we're going to do a $sign and then curly brackets. $sign and curly brackets to escape it and say this is an expression. See that? So instead of the whole thing being two things that are being concatenated, right? This is a formatted string. Yes? Right. This is less error prone and much easier to read than just plain old concatenation. Everything okay? Also, backticks has the benefit that allows you to break up a long string into multiple lines. Very easy. You can just start backtick, line, 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 and then just close the backtick at the end. Right? This will come in handy later on when we want to render lots and lots of content. It will come in very handy later on. So anyway, I've introduced it, and I think there's one question on the quiz about this. So this expression allows you to work better with strings. All right, so it's behaving the same way. Notice that indeed I have 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, and whatnot. What I would like to be able to do now is configure that if I navigate to editor, I will have access to this 1, 2, 3 somewhere in my page here, right? So let's see how we can do that. What we're going to do here is go back to where we declare the course editor route. Right? Where do we do that? I believe we did that at the top level whiteboard. Here's where we declare this course editor. We're going to put a placeholder at the end of this. We'll say : course ID. All right? Right? Meaning I'm going to navigate this when the URL looks like that. Course editor followed by a course ID. Right? Okay. So that if I go back, this 2, 3, 4 presumably is now going to be bound to a variable of the same name, course ID. Right? So how do we get a hold of that? Well, in our course editor, we should be able to now in the constructor. In the constructor, right, we have properties, props. We should be able to have access to course editor extends component constructor. We have super here with props. And if we do a console log of the props, we can see what's in there. Let's see what's in there. Let's do inspect. And as we load this, we can look at the console and notice what's being sent to us in the constructor. See that? There's their match. See the match there? There it is. Right? We can use that match to look at the params. Look at the param. See that? Params. There's my course ID, 2, 3, 4. Passed in as part of the URL. Right? We can now retrieve it. We can retrieve it. Right? We can say maybe something like, this.state is equal to course ID. I can read it from my props dot match dot params dot course ID, right? And then I can render it somewhere here. Maybe I can render it right here. I can say this dot state dot course ID. There it is, 234, right? So now whatever that URL says, right? If this is 123, then it's 123 or 234 or 345. Whatever I pass in as an attribute, as a parameter, it's available to me from within the page. Make sense? Everybody okay? All right.